With WWE being scripted storytelling, sometimes you have to go a little above and beyond to really shock the audience. However, these aren't just shocking, they're deranged. Today I'm breaking down some of the craziest, wildest, and downright most insane storylines in WWE history. Let's start with the first insane storyline being that time that Mae Young gave birth to a hand. In the year 2000, Mae Young began a relationship on screen with Mark Henry, who at the time was being referred to as Sexual Chocolate. Now, Mae Young was around 77 years old at this time, while Mark Henry was around 29 to 30. But hey, this isn't something we've never heard of before, like an older woman or an older man dating a younger woman or a younger man. Like, that's happened before. But then we found out Mae Young was pregnant, and at 77 years old, it's not really a likely possibility. But once again, I'm sure you could find some crazy example in history. When she went into labor, that was when you lost us. Because Mae Young didn't give birth to a child, she gave birth to a rubber hand. Now listen, I'm not really educated in the female anatomy field, but what I will tell you from what I do know is this is probably not normal. Listen, WWE has done some downright crazy stuff and then just decided, you know what, let's just push that to the side and never talk about that again. But that was not the case here. Because in 2012, Mae Young arrived with what was supposed to be seen as her son, a man in a hand suit, showing that we did not just give up on this joke, and honestly, even though it was just brought back for a comedy purpose, it was just downright insane. But if you think that's insane, which it is, let me tell you about the time where Vince McMahon feuded with God. In 2006, at this time, Shawn Michaels had become a devout Christian and started incorporating that into his ring gear and his WWE character, which of course irritated Vince, so Vince McMahon decided to schedule a match between him and his son Shane versus Shawn Michaels and God. Now, you don't have to be religious to understand that God did not show up to this match, and instead WWE decided to shine a big spotlight and have the spotlight slowly go towards the ring with some heavenly music in the background to imitate that God has made his appearance. Now, I would say I'm shocked, but I'm really not. WWE in the past has never shied away from making offensive remarks or comments that make people go,
"Tell me, he didn't just say that."
You know what the worst part is? Vince won the match. Vince booked himself in a match where he would have a successful win over God. You could have at least thrown the fans a bone with this terrible story decision and been like, oh, but Shawn Michaels wins because he has the power of God on his side. He literally booked himself to beat God in a wrestling ring. All right, well, speaking of higher powers, let's talk about the reveal of the higher power that was in control of The Undertaker and the Ministry of Darkness. This storyline was less like dramatically absurd and more just didn't make any sense until you recognize the man who's in charge of it. Back in 1999, The Undertaker was running the Ministry of Darkness, and we kept hearing that there was a mysterious higher power, somebody more sinister and evil than The Undertaker has ever been, was actually the one who was in charge of the entire ministry, and The Undertaker always answered to him. Now, there was a ton of names being thrown back and forth between guys like Ted DiBiase and even the fallen angel Christopher Daniels. But then when we would finally get the reveal, who would it be under the mask? It would be Vince McMahon going, "It was me, Austin! It was me, Austin! It was me all along!" Now, if you know Vince McMahon and you don't really know the storyline, you might be like, what's crazy about that? That sounds something like he would do. The crazy thing was, the Ministry of Darkness abducted, kidnapped, and tried to wed in unholy matrimony Stephanie McMahon to The Undertaker. And when Vince talked about this, it was said that he was doing that to his own daughter just to send a message to the biggest thorn in his side, Stone Cold Steve Austin. If this storyline doesn't tell you what you need to know about Vince, where he takes unpredictability so far that you start predicting that it's going to be unpredictable. What I just said was a whole bunch of words, but for some reason I think that perfectly explains Vince McMahon. I want to talk about unpredictability though. Let's talk about the time where WWE had a giant egg that was ready to hatch, just sitting in their arenas where they went, and everybody for some reason was extremely excited to know what was going to hatch out of this egg. And that's not a joke. It was just a giant egg that would be in the middle of arenas, and we would talk about what was going to eventually hatch out of it. Now, fans were thinking maybe this was just a creative way to have a wrestler debut, and maybe there was just going to be some crazy new storyline or gimmick that was going to happen, and Then we got the reveal. Because at 1990 Survivor Series, the egg would hatch to reveal whatever the hell this is, and it would be called the Gobbl Goer. I swear to Christ, I have no idea how people watch wrestling after this. Now the funny thing is the Gobbl Goer, while the reveal was terrible and obviously no one took anything seriously, it wasn't slammed as bad as some of the other things we've talked about in this video, and it was more just laughable. I think most of it was just because no one was really hurt by this. It was just a dumb little decision, and I mean, come on, let's be honest here. What did we really think was going to hatch out of an egg? Like, did we think that a WWE superstar hatching out of an egg was going to go down as one of the greatest debuts ever for a legendary future Hall of Famer? No. But it was silly, it was funny, it was a stupid little comedy thing. But you know what wasn't silly and funny? The last storyline we're going to talk about. I hate having to talk about the storyline. It's so bad. It's so egregious. I can't believe that it got passed. I don't know if it's the worst of everything I've labeled, but it's disgusting. Let's talk about Katy V. In 2002, Kane and Triple H were in a heated and intense storyline, and in order to escalate the feud even further, Triple H made some crazy claims about Kane. Triple H on Raw would claim that Kane was responsible for the death of a woman named Katy V, who was supposedly his high school crush. And now, already sounds atrocious, but he would claim that Kane was drinking and driving and accidentally killed his high school crush. I have hated when WWE uses vices like alcoholism or drug addiction as some sort of storyline pusher. Jeff Hardy was my favorite wrestler growing up, and it would drive me crazy when they would constantly use drugs and substance abuse as some sort of furthering of a storyline. And while all of this was already crazy, it took an even further and more insane turn than anyone could have expected. Because Triple H would insist that Kane had his way, we'll leave it at that, with the corpse of Katy V at the funeral home. I wish I was joking, but I'm not. And somehow, to make it even worse, there was legitimately a wake going on at the same time of the pre-recording of this event. So people who were legitimately mourning the loss of somebody they loved had to either hear or see all the cameramen recording a man in a mask attempting to have his way with the not real, but we're gonna pretend it's real corpse of Katy V. Out of all the storylines on this list, I'm pretty sure this is the one that got the most backlash because there was just nobody who was happy with this. This was beyond disgusting. It was inappropriate. It was just taken way too far. Now they quickly dropped the Katy V stuff after the constant backlash they received. They continued the feud between Kane and Triple H, just never brought it up again. And this is an exact example of what happens when sometimes you push boundaries just a little bit too far. I'm not going to say a little bit. When you push boundaries way too far. And I'd say WWE probably learned their lesson, at least the new regime has, because I don't think under Triple H's watch we have ever seen or will ever see something even remotely close to whatever the hell this was. But this was only a few examples of some of the most egregious and shocking storylines that WWE has ever had. So if you want to see more, comment down below and let me know which ones you want to see. And until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.